So we have two pieces of video. One is Jim Brooke in Kiev. He pre-recorded this because it's now 3:30 in the morning in Kiev. And then we have a video of the very story that he talks about in his comments. So Chad, let us see what Jim Brooke has to say.
Hi, greetings from Jim Brooke, former New York Times foreign correspondent. I'm sending you this recorded message because I live and work in Ukraine. For you watching on the East Coast of the US, it's 3 o'clock in the morning on Saturday, my time. I'm wearing red to celebrate yesterday's peaceful transfer of power in Washington. A very good experience. My experience with Top goes back to 1984 when he was managing editor and I was hired by the Times. Only a few months later, Top took a gamble on this rookie Metro reporter who spoke Portuguese and sent me on my first foreign assignment to Angola. That was the measure of the man. Good things happened, but he did not go out of his way to take credit, to put his fingerprints on each and every newsroom decision. My most recent memory of Top was 5 years ago at the OPC event in Colombia, Calling All Russia Hands. Top recounted almost half a century later how he broke the news of the Sino-Soviet split. Top had the story, but again and again the censors at the old telegraph office on Gorky Street had spiked any reports intimating tensions within the world communist movement. One day, from an international party congress in Moscow, Top got the full story. Once again, he submitted his latest version on the split and waited. Finally, the censor's curtain, and he said the censor's green curtain opened and a hand held out his carbon copy for transmission. Top's copy was virtually untouched. It led the next morning's New York Times, and that way the world learned that the communist world was cracking in half. Great man, great reporter. Best to you all, Jim Brooke, Kyiv, Ukraine.
And now we have a recording of Top himself talking about the story. I think it was at, Chad, correct me, it was at an OPC storytelling night, or was this at Columbia?
That's right. I think we'll get a card, and I think it was from 2011. It's an OPC event.
Okay.
I've been in this business for half a century. George here would understand that very well. And this is a story, except in a book that I recently wrote on the front lines of the Cold War. I've never told this story anyplace. Moscow, 1960. I just arrived to become the New York Times chief correspondent. At that time, suddenly, there was an editorial in Pravda, the official newspaper, denouncing so-called revisionist monsters within the international communist community, but no identification of who these revisionists were. Then in November, there was a meeting of the 81 communist parties of the world, and I got a leak from the conference. There had been a split in the conference between those supporting Mao and those supporting Nikita Khrushchev, the Soviet leader. And that night, November 23rd, I went to the Telegraph, and I wrote a story about the split, identifying those so-called monsters as the Chinese, and I had no expectation that it would go through censorship, but I wrote the story anyhow, and I walked up to the censorship booth and pushed 2 copies as required. through the green curtain of the censor, left and waited. I waited for hours. And to my amazement, the copy that I got back from the censorship did not have any markings on it. They had sent clear the story about the split at the conference and the denunciations in the press, and it meant that Khrushchev had decided to go public with the split with the Chinese. The next morning, my story led the New York Times, but at that moment, the Sino-Soviet bloc split, and the balance of power in the world changed. That's my story.
Bill, I would just like to say that was the OPC holiday party on our anniversary big year. I think it was 75, where we went to the Algonquin Hotel, where the first OPC board meeting was, not board meeting, first OPC meeting was.
I was looking at the backdrop there. It looked rather ornate. It looked like a hotel.
That was the Algonquin, yeah.